This is a training video on running a compression leak down test on a reciprocating engine. Again, this is a training video. I am going to do it my way. I adapted the 4313 for safety's sake. When I was running it, the gentleman that was helping me, or that I was helping, put pressure on the engine before he should have, didn't say anything, and the prop spun and caught me between the fingers. It came up and caught me like that. So I have changed the procedure just a little bit for safety reasons only. When you go to do your practical, explain it to the DME that your instructor showed you a different way to do it for safety reasons. Can you do it that way, or does he want you to follow the book? I've talked to 2 DMEs that work here. They say they give a lot of leeway on this test. Now, there are certain procedures I do when we run this test. A, we do not use the valve. To me, these valves are stiff. Sometimes they move quick, sometimes they don't. You're going to send whatever pressure you have on here into that cylinder right away. You just control the speed. I do all my pressure adjustments with the regulator. That way I can feather it if I need to, or I can do it as quick as I want to. Next, we never hook to this engine when we have pressure on that gauge. That is a big no-no. That's how I got hurt. Then the biggest thing probably is communication. You're dealing with 2 people. You need to make sure the man holding the prop knows what you're doing. You need to make sure you know what he's doing. Somebody messes up, somebody can get hurt. Those are my little rules we go by. Now, there are preliminary steps we do before we actually run the test. Step 1, they tell you to run the engine up and get it hot. You're usually going to be doing a compression leak down test, A, for an inspection, annual or 100 hours, it doesn't matter, either one. Or if the engine has a problem with it, it's not quite running right. If you're doing it for an inspection, it's pretty much a moot point, because you're going to have to run the engine up to do a mag drop and to check all the other things you need to check. If it's a constant speed prop, you got to check the feathers, so the engine will be hot. You get it in the hanger, you get the cowling off as quick as possible, and you pull the plug leads off. If it's an engine you're trying to figure out what's wrong with it, then yes, you'll probably have to take it out, run it up, getting it up to operating temperature, then get it into the hanger, get the cowl off, and get the plug leads off as quick as possible. Now with step 1. Step 2, they tell you to hook your gauge to 120 to 125 PSI, I think it is. You don't have to crank the gauge to see what it does. If you work at the shop, you should know what your air compressor works at. This one stops at about 125. If you go to a different place to run the test, ask them what their compressor goes to. Now that we've got this hooked up, they want us to put this adapter in whatever cylinder we're going to work on. I've already got the adapter in here. These have brass washers, so you're going to have to snug it down with the ratchet. You can either put one in every cylinder, or you can move it per cylinder. Now it tells us to come back to the gauge and adjust it till we had 20 PSI on our gauge. This is pretty much the only gauge we're worried about. We don't control what's on this gauge. We can only control this one. We are checking the calibration of this tool to make sure it's right. As you can see, both gauges are not reading 20 PSI. That means this gauge needs to be recalibrated. You either got to tell the DME it needs calibration, or your boss, whichever the case may be. If you were to run this test for your practical with a DME, knowing that this gauge is off and not saying anything, he could pretty right fail you. No problems, no ifs, ands, or buts. If he tells you to continue with the test, he's probably just checking to see if you have a knowledge of how the actual test is run. Now that we've done that, we back our pressure off. Now our next step, find compression on this cylinder. Simply put your finger over the test port and pull the prop. That's compression. I'm not looking for top dead center, I'm just looking for the compression stroke. We will find that later on when we start to run the test. At this point in stage, all our preliminaries are done. We're ready to run the test. The one thing you need to make sure you can do is the math. It tells you when you put 80 pounds of pressure into this cylinder, you're allowed a 25% drop in pressure due to leakage. You need to figure out what 25% of 80 is. Once we get to this point, it is now you ask the DME to hold the prop and let him do what he wants to do. Most DMEs will tell you they don't think one person can run this test safely, so he's going to hold the prop. Then the test begins. You're going to say clear prop to make sure anybody around us knows this prop is going to become live. I usually yell hot prop, it's up to you. Once I do that, I'm telling the man holding the prop, I'm getting ready to hook to the engine. When he says it back to me, that means he's holding the prop, go ahead and hook up. Boom, I hook up. Then I'm going to tell him I'm taking it to 20 PSI. He's going to tell me go ahead and take it to 20. I'm not going to do anything till he says it back to me. I take it up to 20, then he might have to wiggle the prop a bit to get the pressure up. You're going to want them as close to equal as possible, but they'll never be equal because we're going to have leakage in this cylinder. Once we get them as close as possible, then I'm going to tell him I'm taking it to 80. He tells me go ahead and take it to 80. That's when I take it up to 80. From that point, if the cylinder is good, all I need to do is back the cage off, remember what the pressure was so I can write it down, and move to the next one. If the pressure's low, I need to say something to him. Again, he may wiggle the prop and may get the pressure up to where we need it. Now I will go get myself an assistant and we'll actually run the test. Now we're going to run the test. I'll have Mr. Rivera, he'll act as the student doing the test, and I will be holding the prop.
All right, so can you please hold the prop, sir?
Got the prop. Remember, you must ask the DME to hold the prop.
All right, clear prop.
Clear prop.
All right, now I'm connecting the... All right, clear prop.
Clear prop.
All right, taking it up to 20 PSI.
Take it to 20. In most cases, both gauges will come up at the same time because this engine's a little worn. We're gonna have to play with the rings. As you see, the cylinder gauge is nothing. As I work with it, we get it up. We'll never be even because there's leakage inside the cylinder. I am at top dead center now.
All right, taking it up to 80 PSI.
Take it 80. If the cylinder is good, all he has to do is release the pressure and go to the next one. We're above 60 pounds, so we're good to go.
All right, releasing the pressure.
Release the pressure.
And disconnecting the line.
Just to... Now, if we were going to be testing the whole engine, our next step would be to just move the adapter to the next cylinder. With a 4-cylinder engine, all we would have to do is rotate the prop 180 degrees. Now, this cylinder would be at top dead center. Once we run this one, we'd move it to this cylinder. We'd turn the engine another 180 degrees, and we could run this cylinder. And the same with the 4th one. If you were doing a 6-cylinder, you'd be turning it about 120 degrees. And that's as simple as it gets.